All right, my friends, I think it's time we talk about the deliverables of a pen test, because there are several deliverables that we have to make sure that every time we do a pen test are in order. If these are not signed by the customer, I will not start my test. Talking about the NDA, Non-Disclosure Agreement, because in there it basically states which is and isn't allowed to be talked about, how data is supposed to be handled. All of those things are going to be in the NDA, and it's important to protect both parties. This is not just important to protect the customer, because I will make sure that I have stuff in that NDA as well that I need signed. For example, that my methods aren't leaked, that my methodologies aren't leaked. Of course, then we have the test plan as well. So once your NDA is signed, usually there's also a contract involved and a test plan. I sometimes merge these. Test plans often are very custom to what our customer needs. So there are specific templates that you can follow, but always make sure that you adapt that to your customer's needs. That's very important. They are readable. They are readable for all parties involved. So that means not just technical jargon, but also explained in normal words what we're going to do. I call it normal words, but it's more like functional way of describing things, of course. And of course, really important, it has to be really presentable, your plan, because often your plan is going to be used to convince your customer as well that your test can start. Have that signed by your customer. Just as a precaution, say signed and read and signed, read and understood. Have them sign their signature. That way, at least, you make sure that you are covered. Now, the test contract as well, very, very important. Have that done by a lawyer. Don't do that yourself. It's too important to mess up. When it comes to a notice of engagement, I often just send my client a little email. Hey, we're going to start, or like a little ping on our messaging channels. We're going to start. I have a little bit of a template for you guys as well. This is just an example. Again, adapt this according to your needs, but I always inform them with a public part and a private part, so that way they know what they can share internally and what not. First of all, I tell them when it's going to start, how long it's going to start, when exactly we're going to be testing, at what hours of the day, and then some internal IP addresses for their internal tech team if they need it, some lists of tools that we'll be using, just to make sure everybody has that. And then we sign it, we wait until they sign it, and then we start. We don't start before they acknowledge it, preferably signed. Well, I say preferably, but I simply don't start before this is signed. That way I know that everybody is covered and we are good to go. Your test report is an important one as well. In here, it's going to contain a few things that you really have to put in there. Like, of course, have a description of every single issue. Do it in depth according to the template in here, or make your own template, but just make sure that everything that is required is in there. Put your own score in there, but also put the CVSS score in there, of course. Now, what do I mean with your own score? You really have to think, is this something impactful for my customer or not? If it's not impactful, don't worry about it too much. Say that it's a, according to you, low. Note the CVSS score. Explain why you think it's a low. But remember, it's your customer who decides that. Always give a little bit of a fix as well, because you're the security expert. And while their developers are amazing at what they do, usually we have a little bit more insight on how to fully fix an issue instead of just apply a little patch to it. Then always put the test data you used in there, the IP addresses you used to attack. That way they at least know that an attack wasn't done by an external party, but that it was you, and that you weren't actually under attack at that moment. One thing you'll notice is that when you do a pen test, you are becoming a target yourself. You're becoming a target, so be very well protected. Make sure that your customer's data is on encrypted drives. Make sure that everything is password protected well. This is super, super important because once the target puts their defenses down, sometimes in a pen test they'll put their firewalls down and stuff like that, they might get attacked for real. And that is why it's so important to be able to make that distinction between you and an actual attacker. Always include a debriefing PowerPoint as well. Just a PowerPoint where you go over the issues with a little bit of a video or a live call preferably, where you say this is what we found, you go over it, you give them a little bit of a summary, but don't go too much into detail. There are usually a full debrief meeting where you go over the full report, and then there is one for the executives where you go a little bit more overview and you also give them a bit more of a conclusion. Make sure all of these deliverables are in order, and especially if you're going to do the CWNPP exam, make sure that it's signed. Reports should be signed off on. Debriefings don't have to be signed off on because it's usually just a PowerPoint, but everything else should be signed off on. Don't start until it's signed off. Very important tip, my friends. Thank you very much. On to the next one.